Welcome back to Review Crew. I'm Tucker.
And I'm Gabe. On today's episode, we're going to review Saving Private Ryan. Tim and Carrie are going on the spot to review Dunkirk.
Here's the trailer for Saving Private Ryan.
So, Tucker, Saving Private Ryan. You and I have talked about this movie so many times. Before we break it down, do you kind of want to tell me, why is this movie so important to you?
For me, this is like the epitome of the American heroes movie.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's on cable TV, like every year, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, 4th of July even sometimes, even though I feel like 4th of July is more reserved for Independence Day.
The Patriot sometimes, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But it's a story of heroism,
yeah.
and it hits hard in that sense. And for people, I don't necessarily have a lot of close family members that are service members, but I know many people that do, and I know that their relationships with those people are often improved by watching this movie with those people, because it's real, and it's a story that's fictional, but it's a fairly realistic thing that could have happened during the Second World War.
Yeah, no, for me, definitely, my great-grandfather was a Purple Heart in World War II. I get my middle name after him. And so this movie, for so many people, there's this deep familial connection to what happened. Now, here's the funny thing. You mentioned realism. And one of the things about this movie is how realistic it is of World War II. Do you kind of want to touch into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, there have definitely been some people that have debunked some of the historical inaccuracies, but when a World War II historian who's really familiar with the firearms of that period says that the M1 Garand ping sound, ping, it's classic.
Yep.
I've watched a few videos. They say nobody has topped Saving Private Ryan. It's ping of the M1 Garand. And so the fact that they're putting that much level of detail into this movie, the realism is there. Mm-hmm. And the sounds, to me, the only thing that might be a little bit more realistic, Band of Brothers, maybe.
Sure, maybe.
But not by much. And it's just the uniforms, the way it's shot, it feels like you're there. And we've talked about this before. We like movies where you get put in a time machine.
Yep.
This is a movie where you feel like you are part of the Rangers landing on Omaha Beach. You're there. Your hand is shaking with Tom Hanks.
Mm-hmm. So much so that actually there were a couple of veterans who said they couldn't sit through the beginning of the movie because of how realistic it is. And that just shows how much love Steven Spielberg put into making this movie. This movie is a byproduct of just reverence for the American heroes serving during World War II. And our actors portray them exceptionally well. I kind of want to start with Tom Hanks because before making this movie, wasn't in a crazy amount of action movies. He had done Sleepless in Seattle, big rom-com guy. And so what do you make of that shift from those movies to being this school teacher who's leading a group into battle?
He's phenomenal in this. I can't remember the Oscar winners of that year, but I know he didn't win, which is tragic because he plays like this cool and collected commander who underneath like that cool and collected nature is really suffering from PTSD. Like they spend a significant amount of time with the handshaking, and he walks that tightrope very well. And you know, it's hard to say if anybody could do it better than Tom Hanks. He's one of the best around, and he's sort of, this was like the building block, I think, for a lot of his dramatic roles that would come later. I think the one I compared Saving Private Ryan to the most is Captain Phillips.
Okay.
Especially that ending scene
of
Captain Phillips. I think he used a lot of the same sort of strategies that he did in Saving Private Ryan. Also, his relationship with Tom Sizemore in Saving Private Ryan is awesome. You know, they're two guys on a mission. Tom Sizemore is like a little bit more of the buddy cop kind of. He's the sergeant. He just wants to get the job done and get out alive, whereas Tom Hanks is by the book, wants to finish the mission. And like the way they play off each other, there's even like a little humor in there. It's a great chemistry, great duo.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you remember like Tom Hanks, he was a school teacher before he was in this. He wasn't drafted, he wasn't forced to go into battle. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And so that just further demonstrates the heroism. Another actor who's in this movie, a man who lives his life a quarter mile of the road at a time, a big family man, Vin Diesel, kind of got started in this movie. What do you think of his performance in this?
You know, I think Vin put in a solid effort in this movie.
For him. Yeah.
For him. I mean, now, you know, he's a family man. I see what you did there.
Thank you.
That was funny. I find his performance in that scene, you know the scene I'm talking about. Sorry to spoil folks, but
it came out 24 years ago.
Yeah.
Watch it.
Watch it. He dies.
Yeah.
But watching him, you know, with the crumpled letter to his, I think it's his dad, that one hits hard for me. And there's a lot of moments in this movie that hit hard. And that one, I think the only reason it's less emotional is because I'm so locked in on Barry Pepper hunting this sniper down. Yeah. It's one of the great scenes ever. And Barry Pepper, to sort of segue to him.
You want to talk about Barry Pepper?
I do want to talk about Barry Pepper.
Go ahead, man.
Barry Pepper in this movie is top 4 or 5 war movie characters.
A character that both our dads love. In this movie. Yes.
He's like the ultimate war movie actor, too. He's popped up in several.
Yeah.
What's the other one? We Were Soldiers.
Yep.
He's the photographer. Not as good as Barry Pepper, Saving Private Ryan, sniper. And with the cross and just like saying the Hail Mary before he fires every bullet, and that one scene where they're walking through the countryside and he's explaining why he thinks he's like God's hand and it's his job to end the Second World War. How do they come up with that? I mean, that was genius.
Yeah. So here's my favorite part of this movie, actor-wise, is Giovanni Ribisi, who delivers this extremely nuanced performance as this guy who just wants to go home and see his mom. And there's a part, you know, this very tragic part where he's dying. And it's just, his performance just takes the air out of you. So that was our discussion on the actors. We'll be back with more pros right after this. And we're back with a discussion of maybe one of the greatest movies of all time, Saving Private Ryan. So, Tucker, we haven't talked about our namesake for this movie yet, Private Ryan, played by Matt Damon. You want to talk about him a little bit?
He's classic in this movie. He's the innocent soldier. He volunteered, but there's like serious emotion when he finds out all his brothers are dead. Yeah. And Matt Damon was pretty young at this point, and we knew he was good, but that scene where it's like when he finds out and he just breaks down, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
And then, probably the most important shot of the movie is the end when, he's looking at Tom Hanks and then his face fades into the old man. Gets me every time. Yeah. Shed a tear.
No, well, it's kind of funny. You talked about shots in this movie. War movies are nothing. You can have this giant scale, but if you don't put it on the screen with the cinematography, it doesn't matter. So directing style, cinematography, how do you kind of feel about it in this film?
I mean, you got Spielberg.
A genius. So one of the greatest working of all time.
It's going to look good no matter what. And he, Spielberg's throwing some clunkers out there, but they're still good looking. And this movie is by no means a clunker.
No,
and
not at all.
Could be his best job ever, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he has, a lot of times, Spielberg tells these very, I don't want to say simple stories, but there's not much nuance and complexity to his films. Not to be, reductive, that's just a personal opinion. There is so much complexity in this film. Barry Pepper's character, he knows what he's doing is wrong. There's a reason he's asking for absolution every time he kills somebody. But it's war. And so you get these massive shots from Spielberg showing the grand scale of these battles. But then you get these close-ups right on people's face. Mm-hmm. And you get to see the emotional turmoil this is causing them. And so it's difficult to make a film of this scale, but still take us on an emotional journey with him. And he does that so excellently. And he's always been excellent, like you said. Made some not great stuff, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Not everything he's made is amazing. But this film is just a genuine masterpiece. Now, part of this movie that I don't think gets talked about enough is the score. And I think, honestly, in films in general, scores get kind of left out. Do you want to talk about why music in movies is just so important?
For this one, it needed something that was rousing and then also patriotic. What did they give you? Rousing and patriotic. Yep. So there's one scene that comes to mind where the score is especially prevalent, and that's kind of at the beginning where the movie actually cuts away from the war and cuts to this office, this war office, where they figure out, oh my God, we essentially killed 3 brothers. Yep. And it's a somber song, but then when they tell the general that this happened, he reads a letter that he wrote to somebody who lost their children in war. And the score swells and it's patriotic, and that's when okay, the plot of this movie is they're gonna go save this kid. Yeah. And they're gonna probably die trying, but it's their duty. Yep. And the music makes the audience feel like it's their duty to see this through. At least for me.
Yeah, no, and just even more than score, the natural sound in this movie is insane. Our opening scene, you hear the shells dropping. You mentioned it, the ping of the bullets. You hear the rotors of the propellers. It's insane how, I wasn't born in 1998, so I haven't seen this movie in theaters. But even just watching it with headphones, you are immediately absorbed into World War II Europe, which, unless you've played Call of Duty, none of us have experienced that. But you're transported there, and that's the key, I think, to a good movie, and that comes through, performances help, but capturing it on the film, your score, everything, Spielberg takes us there, and we go on an emotional journey. Now, I will say, there are some parts of this movie that are kind of a bummer. Some people die, but it constructs this beautiful theme of, in the horrors of war, I think that's when humanity shines the brightest. And I mean, let's be real, with a lot of the things that's going on in the world right now, sometimes this movie hits closer to home than we would think. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, obviously in our day-to-day lives, we don't experience the horrors of war.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'd say the two biggest themes of this movie are courage and patriotism,
Yeah.
and then I'd even throw in family a little bit, because they're saving this kid essentially for his mother, because his mother has gone through maybe the worst possible thing any mother could go through, times 2 or 3. So the family aspect of this is definitely present and can be, felt every day. The courage aspect, there's a deep reverence around America for our armed forces. And I think this movie walks the fine line of respectful and, let's just make an action movie where we blow stuff up, but it has the U.S. Army, so we respect the troops. And there are movies like that that are less so respectful and more entertainment value.
Lone Survivor.
Yeah, exactly. 13 hours,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So we talked about the good. We didn't talk about anything else because this movie's amazing. 1 to 10, what are you going to rate this movie?
You know where I'm going. I'm going with a 10.
Yep. Yeah, no, for me, I actually did the math this morning. I have seen this movie over 100 times. I have not done that for any other movie in my life.
Okay.
This movie, not only is it a 10 out of 10, I genuinely think it might be one of the most important films ever made.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back after this. That's all for this week. If you want to follow more Review Crew content, go to the Review Crew Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as Orange TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube.
Find the Review Q's podcast on Spotify or on our website at orangetvnetwork.syr.edu, where you can also find our blog and more OTN information.
Check out this week's screening hosted by University Union, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Also, be sure to check out Friday Night Movie Night on OTN. This week's movies are A Star is Born, His Girl Friday, The Three Stooges, Brideless Groom, and Superman 04.
See you guys next week.